Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to one more edition to Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show today. Beforehand, folks that are on Blog Talk Radio, please go ahead and share this on Twitter, Tumblr, and all the others. Those that are located on Coffee Party Network, please remember, do your job. That's the only way the media is going to get the job done. And for you who are on Facebook Live, let's defeat the Facebook algorithm. Let's go ahead and share this baby on Facebook, on your page, on your wall, on your Tumblr, on your Twitter, on everything else, because you know what, folks? They don't want us here. You know why they don't want us here? Because I tell you what, we are actually going to tell you the way things are and not the way some would want them to be. So anyhow, we're going to have a great show for you today. Hey, Kavanaugh is, as I told folks, before I get into the show, I want to tell folks a few things. Kavanaugh, for all practical purposes, will be confirmed as a United States Supreme Court Justice. So more than likely, we will have a Supreme Court Justice. Unlike Clarence Thomas, who was a kind of accused of some sort of little pornographic thing, we're going to have a guy that was accused by several women of potential rape. We're going to have a guy that we have as a documented liar. We're going to have a guy that we know for a fact is also a drunk on the Supreme Court. Wow. Donald Trump has made so much vogue, hasn't he? He has made so much vogue. I mean, you think about the past, none of this would have, people would be laughing if they thought for some reason that we would somehow put guys of this type of caliber out here. Look, folks, this I don't know what to. I'm almost lost for words to mention what's going on in this country right now. And if we don't change this, right? I tell you, I want to get to the show, but I want to tell you a few other things as well. And here's some important things I want to tell you. China. We're talking about China and trade. That is not the issue with China. China is in just about every country in Africa, helping them build infrastructure and helping them do this and do that, while we are in countries where we can build bombs and build bases. Who do you think people are going to likely like? Folks, if you're just joining us, please remember to share on Tumblr, share on Twitter, share on Facebook. If you're on the Coffee Party Network, do your sharing out there. If you are on Blog Talk Radio, please remember to share on Blog Talk Radio as well, because that is where it's going to happen. Now, China is in Central America. China is in South America. China is everywhere. Where I'm from, originally Panama, you can't go around to any store or any part of the country and not see the presence of the Chinese out there. It is just the way things are, folks. It is just the way things are. I want to remind you also that after this show is completed, within hours of it, we have the blog, the podcast and the vlogcast out. Be sure to share those as well. That is how we ensure that we are going to get the message across. That is what we do. Anyhow, what's the show about today? Title of the show. Oh, you know what? I didn't bring the show up yet. You know why? I was trying to fiddle with a piece of a video that I wanted to show you guys. And it's sort of an important video that I want to show you as far as how the news media works. And then we'll go into that. But anyhow, old-style journalism is killing America. Independent media, a must now. That's the title of the show. Subtitle: Watch any channel today and see how old-style journalism gets played, mostly by the right and corporations. We must support independent media that have no constraints. Anyhow, old-style journalism has been taking a beating. Many yearn for the journalists of the past. They believe they would magically make things different than they are today. They would somehow not be snowed over by the right. They would not have allowed the ACA or birther circus. These guys would just have been great. Walter Cronkite and all these guys, people think, oh, if they were around, the media would be so much better. The media would be so much better. That's hogwash. Many times we look at the past with sort of a vision of what we would have wanted it to be, but it never was. Many times we look at things the way we want them to be and not the way they are. And that is what we always have to watch, my friends. Because if we don't do that, we repeat the same mistake. So it's hogwash. If Cronkite was here today, he would have suffered the same pathology that we have today. The path to our destruction was paved during the reign of these great journalists. Things didn't change overnight. People think somehow, oh my God, media is horrendous. The media is terrible. And that is the reason people continue to vote against their own interests. That is not the case. The path to destruction began when all these guys that you loved were there. When Walter Cronkite was there in the 60s and the 70s, the Powell Manifesto was released. When the Cato Institute and the Heritage Foundation and these other organizations were being built. It was during the reign of these great journalists. So the path to our destruction didn't start from having the horrendous type of reporting we have today. It is a result of. In other words, while Cronkite did a great thing by effectively starting the stoppage of Vietnam, he never did the stoppage of the plutocracy getting stronger. When Eisenhower spoke about the defense industrial complex, we didn't have Cronkite making big stories about all these items being built to support an industry that is an industry of destruction, where it is inefficient in the way it moves our tax dollars, as opposed to if we had built more bridges and roads and educated more people. And there's so much we could have done, but nobody's talking about that. Cronkite didn't. So why do we sit down and think mainstream media in the past was so much better? No, mainstream media in the past was not better. After all, it was well documented in the Powell Memo. Cronkite and the likes would have been a slave to corporations that control the networks, just like the hosts of the networks today. And they don't have a choice. This is not to blame these guys. I really am not blaming all these hosts at the networks. The network is just a company as well. And every company have a fiduciary responsibility to its shareholders. That is capitalism for you, and that is what the type of system that we have. And we don't have a well enough segmented system where people can have capitalism on one side and a social democracy on the other, where things that shouldn't belong within the capitalist structure are there. And we don't have that purposefully to ensure that we have a media that is able to do what? Screw you. Remember that. Don't blame corporations. Yes, I know corporations are bad. A lot of them are bad. Of course, there are the Starbucks and there are the Costco's and those that treat their employees well and the environment well, and they're socially responsible. But then there are the others, right? But that's not the topic of the show. The topic of the show that I need to get to now is what we're going to talk about, and it is what I said it is. Do you know what time it is? It is that time. So,
it's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, folks, the weekly blog post titled, the title of the weekly blog post is Old Journalism Can't America. This is why only independent media can. How did I do that to a title that needs to be fixed? Anyhow, many, including yours truly, have been ranting about the mainstream media allowing lying politicians airtime. Many times, they give their arguments plausibility by merely placing them in contrast with real policy in discussions. The Affordable Care Act debate demonstrated that on steroids. The reality is that there are specific reasons why old-style journalism is in the current construct of the mainstream media in the current construct of the mainstream media cannot work in our debacle. There is a reason. A few months ago, MSNBC Heidi Prisbala interviewed Congressman Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio. They were discussing the debt and the tax cut scam. I wrote the following then. I titled the article then, "Old Journalism Gives Lying Politicians a Platform to Lie and Misinform." Congressman Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio, appeared on Morning Joe. His interview illustrates why old-style journalism is responsible for an American population that is misinformed. This type of polite journalism, where the politician lies through his teeth and the journalist simply reiterates a question without giving the audience the truth, hurts America. The last word on the topic Americans heard was an unrefuted diatribe by a lying politician. Paul Krugman proved what Heidi was saying definitively, and that is the last word Americans should have heard. Unfortunately, the mainstream media seem content in leaving these liars unchallenged. And that is why alternative media, like yours truly, what we're doing here in other places, that is why, and you know, I'm self-serving, but what the heck, it's a must. We have to support the types of media that you have out there, the TYTs, the Generations, and all these other guys that are out there. But let me let you see the interview. I'm going to. I think it should play just fine. So check it out.
Congressman, it's Heidi. You spoke about the debt in the Omni bill. Let's talk about the debt in the tax cut bill, because in that CBO report, it says that the tax bill itself will add $1.9 trillion to the debt over the next decade. We were made a lot of specific promises on this tax cut bill that it would pay for itself and it would generate more revenue, that it would generate a $4,000 pay raise per worker. And now we're seeing that a lot of the money is just going to corporate buybacks.
But I mean, a lot of it is going to employees too. We have all kinds of employers in our district giving raise to their employees, and letting families keep more of their money is a darn good thing. So I don't buy into this idea that letting the American people keep their money somehow is a cost to the government. I think it is just good policy, letting you keep what you've earned, letting the economy grow, which in fact it is growing much faster than it did in the previous 10 years.
$4,000 per person, Congressman, and that the bill would pay for itself. Those were specific promises.
But the problem with the deficit and the debt is spending. It's not letting people keep their money. It's not tax cuts. It's spending. Those tax cuts are good. They are going to produce better economic growth. We know that. And people are getting to keep more of their money. Corporations are talking about what they've given to their employees. All those are positive things. The problem is spending. And the bill that we passed 3 weeks ago was a big problem because we increased discretionary spending higher than any bill in the last 10 years, with the exception of the Obama stimulus package.
All right, Congressman Jim Jordan, thanks for being on this morning.
You bet.
Okay, I'm pretty sure you got all of that. Skype caller on the line. I'll get to you right after the blog of the week, but stay on with us. Anyhow, so as you can see, the mainstream media allows them to reframe the debate, and after they've reframed the debate, it's on their terms, and their terms are usually lying to the American people. Anyhow, I began with that example because even today we continue to see that kind of interview more often than not. Recently, Marvin Kalb, the former foreign correspondent with CBS News, wrote the piece titled, "In this dark hour, it is important to remember that good journalism has triumphed before." Parts reprinted from his book titled "Enemy of the People: Trump's War on the Press, the McCarthyism and the Threat to American Democracy." This is what he said. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read three little sections of that came from his book. Actually, he posted this on the History Network from his book. And here's the first part. In the context, quote, open quote, in the context of the press struggle to cover the world of Trump and beyond, it is important to recall that Murrow, in his memorable 1954 See It Now broadcast about Senator McCarthy, helped bring an end to a political crusade that was frightening the American people and undermining American democracy. He exposed McCarthy as a lying charlatan who deserved the Senate censure he was to suffer a few months later. Though many other reporters covered the same story, only Murrow will likely be remembered as the one who had the courage to take a senator widely considered to be a danger to the republic. In American history, few other reporters have played so prominent a role in ending a national nightmare. Now, we have a national nightmare here. Is there somebody to end it? Close quote. He also gave CBS Walter Cronkite kudos for his Vietnam War alternate report, and he says as follows, open quote, Walter Cronkite, another of CBS's twinkling stars, whose even-handed anchoring on the CBS Evening News won him the title the most trusted man in America, did a commentary about the Vietnam War in February 1968 that helped persuade a president not to run for re-election and a nation to change its war policy and ultimately begin to withdraw, close quote. That is, of course, Johnson, who didn't run for re-election. We know why. He also acknowledged Woodward and Bernstein's role in bringing down Nixon. Open quote. On June 17, 1972, a team of burglars was arrested for breaking into the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee at the Watergate complex in Washington. Two young reporters at the Washington Post, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, soon began covering the story that led in August 1974 to the first resignation of an American president and to the profound changes in the nation's politics. Would Richard Nixon have resigned anyway, even if Woodward and Bernstein had not applied their considerable investigative skills to break in the Watergate story? I doubt it. Their remarkable run of one exclusive story after another kept a steady spotlight on the puzzling break-in. Who were the burglars? Who paid them? Why the Democratic headquarters? Was the Nixon White House involved? What was Nixon's role? These questions frame the Watergate scandal, which always will be associated with the reporting of Woodward and Bernstein. Now, that is interesting, right? Because those guys did great work. But Nixon wasn't nearly as flashy. Nixon didn't nearly have as many skeletons already revealed as Donald Trump did. So what's the problem? It worked on Nixon. Could we say good journalism is not occurring with Donald Trump? Yes, we can say that to some extent, but it's deeper, and it's the reasons why I said, for those people who are wishing for the Cronkite or the Bernstein or or all these other guys that we think, Woodward and all these guys that we think were the great journalists of the past, who, had they lived now, or not live because some are still alive, had they been here now, that somehow there wouldn't have been a Trump, or somehow Trump would by now been castrated. No, folks. After I give the blog of the week, I'll talk about certain things that made that not a possibility just because of how things are run today. But let me go ahead and make sure and start looking at some of these things here real quick. Good. Okay, so here's the deal. Continuing. Marvin Cobb continued his piece acknowledging social media, the internet, and social media's impact on today's news. He points out that established papers like the Washington Post and the New York Times still have very competent investigative reporters. He, however, I want you to listen good here. He, however, still maintains a fundamental disconnect between old style, or rather, it's a complete fundamental disconnect between old style journalism and the state of intersectionality between news, politics, and business. I want to repeat that. He, however, still maintains a fundamental disconnect between old-time journalism and the state of the intersectionality between news, politics, and business. I wrote the piece, Today's Journalism is Incompatible with Today's Right-Wing Politics. We need a new paradigm. That's the title that I gave it, where I pointed out the following, and this is what I said then. The current form of journalism is incapable of saving America from the likes of Trump and the misinforming institutions funded by the plutocracy. Think tanks like the Heritage Foundation and tools the plutocracy uses to maintain their power, even as their supported policies decimate all else. They present seemingly legitimate studies and talking points the media is enticed to cover. So you'll hear things like, a research by the Heritage Foundation says XYZ. For me, whenever I hear about a research document or I look up a research or whatever, if I see Heritage Foundation, it's immediately disqualifying for that study. I never continue with that study if it has Heritage Foundation on it. Better, I generally go a bit deeper. If I see a study by some third organization I've never heard of, I try to find out who is funding that organization, because many times what you find, it's an appendage of the Heritage Foundation by another name. So what is very important, right, is when you're reporting, when you're finding stories, when you're educating yourself, to also find out the sources of these types of information, which, right now, as the media works, everybody's trying to save costs in the media because it's not really income producing part of the business. So therefore, if an institute hands them a piece of paper or sends them an email or send them a link that seems plausible, it gets on the news. However, when it comes to real news, you have to go to the investigative journalist, but we'll continue with that in a minute. So, continuing with that prose. So today's journalism is driven by the sheer volume of material released by the right that seems to necessitate coverage irrespective of value. See? In other words, if you're engulfed in information, bad information, somehow you still go ahead and put it out there because you know what? With hundreds of cable channels to fill, with hundreds of cable with dozens of news channels to fill, both local and national is what I mean, of course. You have to have material, and even local channels are looking for material. Look, we've had several organizations come in for free material from Politics Done Right or egbertowillies.com. Can we cover that? Can we take that? And of course, you want that little citation, right? Because it's sort of, hey, one of these other guys used your stuff. But anyhow, so today's journalism is driven by the sheer volume of material released by the right that seems to necessitate coverage irrespective of value. Secondly, the white papers and data from the right-wing think tanks with their air of plausibility is always available for a hungry media with an increasing need for content, which is what I was elaborating about. Now, worse, however, today's journalism continues the X said while the Y said this orthodoxy that no longer works because it is a system the right gamed. In other words, what the media was normally used to do, they go interview person A, they report person A says this, they go to person B says this, and then they will go ahead and they say, well, based on XYZ, that is what we have. Well, the right has learned how to game that. The right has said, okay, they come to us, we'll give you a narrative, and not only a narrative, but we'll send you places. That kind of journalism doesn't work anymore. The type of journalism you need in today's world is what I call progressive confrontational journalism, activist journalists. Why? Because when you're lied to, you can respond and specifically tell your audience, the congressman at this point in time is lying to you. When there's a drug on the market that comes out that causes valve leakage, it is a responsibility of the news media on any channel to say, this medicine causes valve leakage. But you know what happens today? If you ever notice, there are a lot of things that are advertised on TV, and you sit down and wonder, wait a minute, why are they even advertising things on TV the customer knows nothing about? You even see Boeing and other guys just go ahead and advertise on TV. Let me tell you something, folks, and this is something people have to understand. What you see is not always what you get. What you assume is not always the case. Is there any reason for Boeing to advertise guns or tanks or planes? No. Any person who wants to buy a jet, a commercial jet that is, knows where to go. They know where to go. So therefore, you have to ask, when you watch all these commercials on TV, all these ads on TV, you have to ask yourself, why? It's called the big payoff. In other words, if I am advertising on your network, how bad can the stories be, however true, that you're going to write about me? You don't want to lose my business. So therefore, if I have bad stories, if we can find a way to kind of hide it or not make it as bad as it's going to be to kind of keep our cred, that's what we'll do. But you sit down someday and watch every single channel and watch all the commercials that you have there and see how much of them really have an audience on the channel that they're on the network that they're on. Many times you find out, the only reason that they're possibly there is to curry favor with the network so that if something ever comes up, they can go to the network and say, well, you probably shouldn't cover that story this way, or give us a chance to give you the angle. And if they're giving you several $1 million a year, you're going to say, well, John, and think about it. This has happened a lot of times. There are several 60-minute reports that's been thrown on ice. There are several stories on different networks, news networks, that the reporters complained they were put on ice. Why? Because they would upset the donors. Who are the donors? The people that are advertising with you. That is one reason why it is important for you to support independent media, because our responsibility is only to you. But let me finish the blog and then I'll go to the telephone. All right. Only independent media, or let's back up. But who says we must continue the techniques learned in the schools of journalism? Because remember, those techniques are what's taught in journalism. I am not an official journalist. I'm an engineer turned activist journalist. And I like to make sure to call myself an activist journalist because I put myself into the flow of the story. If there's a lying politician or if there's a liar out there, I won't go ahead and say, well, he said that or she said that or whatever. I will jump immediately into the story. If there is a lie, I will jump immediately into the story if there is deception, both written, spoken, or visual videos, okay? That is what we're all about, my dear friends. Only independent media, or let me continue. A dynamic society requires change when realities change. The plutocracy and the right have gamed the current form of journalism. As such, it is essential that journalists adopt a new paradigm. Only independent media can and are disseminating the full work of investigative journalists to their segmented mass audiences. So, if I get a report from the New York Times, I will go ahead and try to put out that full report or link directly to that report. Why? Because if you watch the 30 minutes of mainstream media's evening cast, there's very little that you learn there other than superficialities and all the things that you really don't need. Anyhow, continuing. Why? Sometimes the work of these journalists conflicts with the interests of those who advertise with the mainstream media outlets. Additionally, independent media like we did above the congressman's interview are here to deconstruct and correct the misinformation the mainstream media is too polite to address or cannot discuss for political or financial reasons. Folks, the telephone number is 716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. Give me a call. Let's see. Line number 1. Come on in.
Hello, my friend Egberto. How are you, sir?
This is my friend from Singapore.
Yes, indeed.
How are you doing today, sir?
Pretty good, hanging there. It's news. A lot of news is coming from USA because it seems they got a new NAFTA between Mexico and Canada and US, but they changed the name. No, it's not NAFTA anymore.
It's MCA.
It's called yes, exactly.
And you know what that stands for,
so
right?
Isn't that yes? I mean, it's this guy. He just he's like a magician.
That
he
is his
first
goal.
cancel it. Yeah. And then he goes back, he says, well, I cannot do better than what they did before. Okay, I will make a little bit changes here, there, and now we call it different name, and everybody happy. You see, I told you I will get better deal, and etc.
Well, here's the funny thing that I don't know how many people realize, right? And this is important for people to know.
Yes.
NAFTA is one. When you take a look at what they did in NAFTA, or rather did with the MCA as it's called now, the TPP actually had all the features that they have there in NAFTA, plus more because it covered the Pacific Rim. Now, let me be frank. I was not a supporter of the TPP because of tribunals and that sort of a thing. The TPP would have allowed corporations to actually overrule local governments if the local government infringed on something they wanted to do. So I was never a TPP supporter, but the thing about it is what the MCA has is many of the features that were found inside of the TPP. So what Trump is doing is cutting and pasting from different documents and that sort of stuff to come up with new policy that is nothing new. But you know what? I still want to, we ought to learn to give credit where it's due. And let me tell you where I'm going to give Trump credit here. And oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to do this. Many of us hated NAFTA. Many of us hated the TPP. And because Trump is trying to make his base believe that he's working for them, he nominally got things changed. He helped the dairy farmers by allowing an extra small percentage of American product into Canada. Canada was trying to protect its own industry like we protect our industry here. We once protected our oil, right? We never allowed the exporting of oil. The countries do all kinds of things like this for in order to protect their domestic supply or whatever. So, I was listening to, I forgot the name of the woman. I interviewed her at Netroots Nation. She is one of the lead analyst and spokesperson for trade. And she was one of the, Waller, I think is her name, was one of the people completely against NAFTA and also had some problems completely against TPP and also had some problems with NAFTA. And she came out not in favor of the plan because she said a lot of it is still yet to be written. But what she said is that it does have some features that improved on NAFTA specifically. Our farmers are able to, or rather the ranchers who make oil, not make oil, but who produce milk. They get more of their milk inside of into Canada, et cetera, et cetera. So that is, was it worth the disruption? Not really. But you know what? It got a few countries thinking, oh my God, we better not be too tight because there's a madman in the White House that will just blow things up even if it hurts his own.
Yes. And it's to me is the same. It's a little bit maybe changed here and there. And $16 wages for everyone, at least in United States, if they work in automobile industries, or even in Canada or Mexico, 16. So even 16 is not that much for a person. They should give them much more than $16.
And they're working hard. And all that kind of stuff is not a lot of money. And worse, The truth of the matter is, $16 in America is a lot worse than a Canadian making $16. And the reason why is Canada has socialized medicine, which means they don't have to carry that cost. We do. We have to carry that cost. In fact, one of the reasons America loves building cars outside, it's funny. We have a tendency to outsource, we outsource what's is immediately visible, but we also outsource what's not immediately visible. As an example, when we build American cars in Canada, what it really means is that we are defraying healthcare costs. Because the theory is on every car sold in the United States of America, $1,500 of that car is healthcare. Okay? So if that is the case, you go build your car in Canada, that healthcare cost for the corporation does not exist. Or it does not exist in the form that it exists in the United States. Of course, some taxes are going to be higher there, but Canada has some of the same diseases that we have here in the United States, which is we love to give corporations breaks. The only difference is that they also have a strong social safety net. They also have universal coverage. We don't.
Absolutely. But the Mexican, I think, auto workers now are happy. For at least for them, it's got a little bit better because they get $16 per hour before it probably takes $10. Equivalent of $10 in American dollars in Mexico. But now they get 16. So little bit, I think, is better. They make it, but it still is all the same. I mean, it's part of North American Union. And, I mean, he says anti-globalist, everything, but actually what he does, he's with globalists.
He's the biggest globalist there is.
He wants to... Yes, absolutely. Because it's for him, his pocket, his Trump Towers and all those buildings he has. It's more money for him and less tax for him, of course. And I'm sure if you see the movie called Trojan Horse.
I didn't see the movie, but I know what Canada. The Trojan Horse is all about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That, Mexico, Canada, and United States, they're trying to get one president for all those three countries, and it's a lot of, it's at least 6 hours, I think, or 6 hours minimum.
Really?
But it's about North American Union, but. I cannot find it anywhere. From Singapore side, maybe you guys can find it. It's still, but it was made by CBC, Canada. So maybe still you go, right. Maybe still you can find it, or somehow there must be a copy of it still available in somewhere, or YouTube, or maybe Amazon. I'm sure they should have it, or if not, they will bring it up. But North American Union. So right now they show Mexico, America, Canada is under one color now.
Well,
on the map showing.
We have that now again.
Yeah.
But let me just say that look, ultimately in the long run, the truth always comes out, and people would realize this. Now, here's the problem. We have an election that's coming up that people are not very well aware of what's going on. So it is imperative. It is imperative that people support the independent media, who are the only folks that are going to go out there and really, the problem with independent media is segmentation, right? We have hundreds, if not thousands, of independent media, folks that do things like Politics Done Right, or the Majority Report, or the TYT is a bit larger now, but the Turks Network. We have Jim Black and several others that are out there doing this. We're doing our part. Each of us reach anywhere in a week, several thousand people to a few million people. But what has occurred over time is we've been throttled. I mean, it is amazing. Whereas when in the early days, after doing one of our shows, we would have 6,000 to 10,000 people that would have seen the show. In today's show, if we have a show like this on journalism, which isn't one of those riveting shows that a whole lot of people are going to show up to, you don't get that many people from the eyeballs alone because, well, it's not a subject that lends itself to a whole lot of people coming in or whatever. However, even subjects that we do that are controversial that would normally bring in thousands at the same time in one period. We don't do that anymore because we know what's going on the internet and we understand how the throttling works. So we have to support independent media to ensure that this stuff can get to other people. One of the reasons you see me come up all the time and say, hey, folks, go ahead and share right away. It's for that exact reason. And let me take this time, Mike, to do a quick plug for Politics Done Right. Folks, guess what? Sure. I released last night How to Make America Utopia. The first chapter of the book, the introduction, was released last night on the website. So if you go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright, just go ahead and subscribe to get How to Make America Utopia. And it's very, very inexpensive. How to Make America Utopia. Why don't you subscribe? And in the process of subscribing, feel good. And why should you feel good? Because you're supporting progressive, independent media. You know, one of the reasons we continue to lose is we don't have the resources that the big guys have. The big guys at the corporations pay to you. Remember what I told you about General Electric? General Electric doesn't even have to advertise, but they are still advertising on TV. Ask yourself, why would they have to advertise a Dreamliner? Think about it. Yeah, you could say, oh, well, they want people to want to fly the Dreamliner. Oh, but wait a minute. That's not how people fly. People decide they're going to go somewhere and hope that the route that they're on will have a new plane. And if that new plane is a Dreamliner, oh, that would be great. If it's one of the others, oh, that would be great. What I'm trying to tell you, folks, is simple, right? We get what we pay for. Right now, we have a government that we got, that we deserve. Why? Because we took our eyes off of the ball. We didn't only take our eyes off the ball for one particular reason. We took it off for several reasons. So my dear brothers and sisters, please be sure to support not only Politics Done Right, but many others. The Majority Report, TYT, Tim Black, many others that are out there doing this. Look, go to patreon.com, patreon.com/Politics Done Right. patreon.com/Politics Done Right. Patreon.com/Politics Done Right. One more time, patreon.com/Politics Done Right. And you know what? Those of you who subscribe to Politics Done Right, you get the first, you actually, as I'm writing this book, How to Make America Utopia, you get to read it as I write it. And not only that, there is a Facebook group associated with this book that, let me tell you what my expectations are. As I come out with a chapter after a chapter, I am hoping to get critique. I'm hoping that folks would say, well, why did you say this? Well, why did you say that? I hope folks would engage and say, well, could you say that a little bit differently? Or maybe give an idea that I just take up as a quote and put in the book. And of course, what that means is you'll be cited and you will be a part of the book. You'll be cited in a book, ISBN, a national book, international book, that is. So what we have released last night was the first chapter of How to Make America Utopia. And I'm currently writing the second chapter. And not only that, but like I said, there is now a Facebook group associated with this that you can go in there. Give me suggestions. Give me some, when you read that chapter, if there are things, and take a look at the table of contents as well. And if there are some items that you say, well, you know what, Egberto? This book is covering that. Just maybe you should also include this in the book. And if that's the case, I will. And if it's you who suggested it and it made it into the book, I'm going to cite you, with your permission, as of course, as the person who got that particular item in the book. Then, of course, the rest of America will know all about you. The rest of the world will know all about you, whoever buys the book. Remember, my previous book was Mike, I'm coming to you in a second, but my previous book was As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. And I tell you, I believe strongly, right? I believe strongly in giving good kudos to people where it's due, right? So when it came to this book, well, of course, I gave Krugman and all those guys their kudos. But at the time that I wrote this book, I was what's called a CNN eye reporter. And eye reporters were what we call, citizen journalists, right? And if you gave really good material, if you provided very good material to these guys would want, would put your stuff on air. I had I think it was over 500 of my reports made it to one of the CNN properties, either headline news or CNN, the main channel. And in fact, I remember my daughter was traveling somewhere and she said, "Dad, were you on TV today? My friend I think it was in Singapore, Mike, just saw you in Singapore on CNN." I'm like, oh, okay. But so what I'm saying with you guys, I give, anytime somebody gives me information that's worth quoting, I do that. And by the way, if you subscribe, you can also get this book, the e-copy of this book, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, is also a part of the deal, depending on the level that you decide to subscribe at. So go ahead and go to patreon.com, patreon.com/politics done right. It is worth it. You wanted to say something, Mike?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. You know, is we, the people in United States, are just not nobody anymore. We have no voices.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, such a nice radio station like yours, we have voices, but I mean, in United States, people are just with iPhone and just crossing the street with iPhones and just tweeting 24 hours a day.
You know, that's by design.
People.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. Go ahead. No, yeah, it was. You're right, by design.
Let me tell you something, Mike, and this is something that I read, and I want the audience to understand this well. Something that I read this morning, and that was Africa. There are certain people in Africa complaining about Chinese colonialism in Africa, right? Because they're claiming that they're doing the same thing the imperialists did in Africa. And then there are people who came back and said, oh, absolutely not. China actually wants an independent Africa for their own reasons, right? They don't want another headache where they have an unstable country that they are going to have to govern or anything like that. So for those the weaker countries where they're building in Africa, somehow they're saying that it makes things all around better. But what I tried, like I said earlier in the program, is China is all over the globe. They're all over the world building. We're all over the world threatening. I think when you're talking about building something, you're a lot more effective than when you're threatening something. And that is something that we as Americans, we better try to kind of learn rather quickly, because if we don't, what's going to happen is, again, you know, we're already, we've lost quite a bit by electing Donald Trump. The respect that folks had for the individual American as an intelligent being is no longer there. So that is something that's going to take a long time to gain back. We thought George W. Bush took us somewhere that we didn't want to go. We thought nobody could get the views of America more wrong than under the administration of George W. Bush. Boy, were we wrong. Boy, were we wrong. But you know what? Recovery is there, or recovery will be there, and we'll be there ready for that when it happens on November 6th going forward. But folks, the telephone number is, and let me put that back on the screen, the telephone number is 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. I wish I had more callers calling in. Blog Talk Radio, our Coffee Party Network. Call in, give us a call, 646-716-5812. Welcome. Let me see who I need to welcome aboard. Welcome. Oh, I have my phone right here. Let's go ahead and pull that out, and then I'm going to read a few. Chase K. Escamilla, welcome aboard. Thank you, sir. Michael Rudnin, or regular, Michael is what I call or researcher. Michael Rudnin is here with us. We also have, let's see, that's not Keith Overman. Let's see, then we have, I saw somebody, Kathleen Morgan, welcome aboard. Tim Black is a good guy as well. And I saw some others. There is Deidre Scott, welcome aboard. For some reason, all of these are not showing up on the phone, so let's see if I can go ahead and fix that. Deidre, let's see, Deidre, how do you say that? Deidre Scott, welcome aboard, Deidre Scott. And how come that didn't make it onto the phone? Okay, well, somehow all these things don't necessarily sync at all of the time. So, okay, so she did make it now. Okay, folks, let me go ahead and start reading from the thing here to answer folks' calls. Let's see. Casey Samia says, good luck. Michael Redden says, are we going to talk about Trump's classic misogyny? I know you're not thinking. I know you're not thinking. You never do. No, I tell you something. I don't. I saw that last night. What Michael Redden is talking about is when a woman asked Donald Trump a question beforehand, she just kind of offhand said, I wasn't thinking when somebody was handing her a microphone. And I think what happened is she probably gave away the microphone or something like that. I don't know exactly what happened. But when she said that in a self-deprecating way, not for the president, but for the people surrounding her, president pretty much told her, I know you're not thinking. You never do. Have you ever heard the president? Well, let me back up. Go ahead. Did you want to say something, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, besides in Singapore as well too. I mean, so since when a president is so bad and bad etiquette, bad manners with a woman?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because either he has to say it's a fake news, go ahead, your fake news, go ahead up and ask your question, or is abusing. He is an abuser.
Yes,
he is a fascista.
Yeah, he's a fascist. A lot of people around the world think he is.
He is, and I don't know how. I mean, every time he talks anywhere in the stadiums or mini stadiums or whatever location, the people get paid cash, and then they say, "Go there, put this sign up, and clap for him whenever he talks." We tell you when clap, right. And this is all manufactured to me. What do you think of that, please?
I mean, what we have is a manufactured support for Donald Trump in some areas. Now, in certain parts of this country, he has the people so wrapped up that they're indoctrinated. And the reality is, I don't understand the pathology, no matter what state they're in, why that is so. I just know that it is. But let me tell you something, my friend. The fever, as Obama always said, will break, and it will break when these guys get dirt poor. So I'm just waiting for that to occur, and I think there's a lot that will occur in November. I am hopeful. Okay, let me talk about Michael Rudnin says the question of China's intentions in Africa are still to be determined. Investment or colonialism? I honestly think, as far as China is concerned, it is all about money. But then again, we can say colonialism was all about money, but I don't think it comes with the subjugation of force, both force patriation and repatriation of its people. So I'm going to err on the side of saying China just wants to do whatever is going to get them the best buck. And that's all I think they really want. Because, that's all I think they want. Okay, my biggest problem with the media is that they don't nearly often enough talk about issues that matter. And you're absolutely correct. What did we talk about today? The media and how the Heritage Foundation influenced the media. And what else did we teach you today? What we try to do here, and this is important. I'm glad you said that, Rudnin. This is important, right? You hear us rant and we talk after
Yes.
the blog of the week. It's almost many times if I don't have somebody to interview, it's always a laissez-faire program, right? If somebody calls in like Mike from Singapore, we'll talk about an issue that may be on Mike's mind, or if somebody else calls in from somewhere, because that's the structure of this show. It's your show, right? So anybody can call in and change the subject. Rudnin have called in and changed the subject. Even some of my Republican listeners have called in and changed the subject because it's your show. That's the idea. But there are other things that we do here, right? You'll hear me throw things in that you'll never hear on network TV. Like I just told you about, watch ads on your channel wherever you are, on one of the network channels wherever you are, network news or otherwise. Look for a commercial that doesn't belong. Okay? Look in the news and see what's going on. When I say news, I'm talking about investigative reporters now at the paper rags, because they're the ones that don't necessarily get as much as the TV folks from these big guys. Although every now and then you may see a big Boeing spread or something in one of these papers. But look at a commercial and ask yourself the question every time. Do these guys really need to be here? Are they really going to get a bang for the buck? And the reason I'm saying that is the kinds of things we cover here. We make you think. We make you look at things differently. Most people don't look at the externalities. Most people don't look another level below. Most people don't look at the connections. Why? It's tiring. That's what you have Politics Done Right for. What we do, however, is we put that at the forefront of your psyche when it needs to be there. And right now it needs to be there because you're going to start getting ads from different, what I like to call them, what do you call those guys that have a vested interest? Stakeholders. There are a whole lot of folks with stakeholders in our government that will start putting ads on that seem to have absolutely nothing to do with our politics, have nothing to do with what's going on. But there's a purpose. And that's what we are here for. Folks, we're coming to the end of the show. Give me a quick closer, Mike, before something to close the show with.
Sure. And now Trump worries for the young man. Trump says the reaction to sexual assault allegation surrounding Kavanaugh make it a very scary time for young men in America.
Absolutely.
What a joke.
When I say absolutely, so I was going to say absolutely. I can't believe that guy said that, because you know what? What he's saying is, I posted a piece from Dr. America about that. If you go to our website, search for Dr. America. He wrote a piece that addresses exactly what Trump said. And it's interesting because he wanted folks to know, no, most of us guys out there, even though we were 15 or 16, and yes, we all love women and we all loved what we didn't have, whatever, we never treated women that way, the vast majority of people. I also wrote a story about how what happened when I was a pizza delivery person when I was working on my engineering degree at the University of Texas at Austin. It was quite a sight to see what happened on those frat houses. Thank you so kindly for calling in, Mike. It's always welcoming.
Thank you very much. No problem. Anytime.
Thank you, my dear friend.
God bless you.
Let's close this with one more ask here, my dear friends. Please do remember, this is a progressive show that needs your support. Please go ahead and go to patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Again, that website is patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Remember, at a very low level, you can actually you will be able to read How to Make America Utopia. The first chapter is out, and as I mentioned to you guys, there is a discussion group associated with the book. If you go ahead and give us suggestions, don't be surprised if you get an email from me or a note from me saying, hey, I love what you had to say. I'm going to put that in the book. And guess what? May I cite you. So, folks, go ahead and get that subscribe to Politics Done Right. That is patreon.com/Politics Done Right. No matter what subscription level you're at, if you give good suggestions in that group for this book, you will be there. And don't forget, some subscription levels also include As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. That was my first book. I wrote that book when I was extremely upset about what was going on in the country with getting laws passed under President Obama. Please go ahead and consider getting that as well. Folks, my name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this baby every single time. I am out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.